The rain hammered the windows of Morrison and Associates like it had a personal grudge against the glass. Rebecca Clark sat in the back corner of the mahogany-paneled conference room, her worn canvas jacket still damp from the walk over, her hands clasped tight in her lap. The fabric smelled like wet dog and old pennies. She'd counted the water stains on the ceiling tiles 3 times already. 14. Same number as the month since she'd had a real paycheck. Across the room, her brother Richard adjusted his Rolex for the 4th time in 10 minutes. The watch caught the overhead light with each movement, a deliberate flash meant to remind everyone in the room that he'd made something of himself. Navy suit. Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than Rebecca's monthly grocery budget. He checked his phone, scrolled, checked it again. The man couldn't sit still for 30 seconds without needing digital validation. Next to him sat Stephanie, their older sister, in designer sunglasses she hadn't bothered to remove despite being indoors. The frames were oversized, black, the kind worn by women who lunch and call it networking. Her fingers moved across her phone screen in precise, practiced swipes. Instagram, probably. Curating the image of a life that was crumbling behind the filter. George Morrison cleared his throat from the head of the table. 62 years old, jowls that shook when he spoke. Half-moon glasses perched on a nose that had seen too many families tear themselves apart over money. He adjusted those glasses now, looking down at the thick folder in front of him. The conference room smelled of lemon polish and something else. Desperation, maybe. Or just the particular staleness that comes from sealing windows against Portland weather for too many decades. Have you ever been the one everyone counted out? The one they thought got screwed? Stay with me. George broke the silence with the kind of voice attorneys perfect over decades of delivering bad news disguised as procedure. I appreciate you all coming on short notice. Margaret's instructions were very specific. She wanted this handled quickly. Richard leaned forward, elbows on the table. Let's just get to it, George. Some of us have flights to catch. Rebecca said nothing. Her 8-year-old son Kit was at her neighbor's apartment, probably glued to the TV, eating cereal for dinner because Rebecca hadn't had time to cook before this meeting. She'd promised him pancakes tomorrow. The kind with chocolate chips. If she could afford the chocolate chips. George opened the folder. The sound of paper sliding against paper filled the room. I'll skip the preamble and move directly to the distribution of assets. To Richard Thornton, I leave the sum of $1,250,000 to be transferred from my primary accounts. Richard exhaled through his nose. Not quite a smile, but close. His legs stopped bouncing under the table. To Stephanie Hayes, I leave an equal sum of $1,250,000 to be transferred from the same accounts. Stephanie's fingers finally stopped moving on her phone. She set it down, screen side up, notifications still lighting the surface in rapid pulses. George paused, looked over his glasses at Rebecca. Something flickered in his expression. Sympathy, maybe. Or pity. Rebecca couldn't tell which, and didn't particularly care for either. And finally, to Rebecca Clark, I leave the property located at 47 Harlow Ridge, Portland, Oregon, including the structure, the land, and all contents within. The silence that followed had weight. It pressed down on the room like a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. Rebecca stared at the table, counted the wood grain patterns. 7 visible rings in the section in front of her. Richard broke first. A sound erupted from his throat, sharp and ugly. Laughter, but the kind without joy. Pure disbelief dressed up as amusement. Wait. She gets the house? The Harlow property? George's voice remained neutral. Professional. That is correct. Stephanie pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, though whether from crying or poor sleep, Rebecca couldn't tell. George, have you seen that place? It's not even livable. The foundation's cracked, the roof hasn't been safe since 2018, and the city cited it twice for code violations. I have seen the property, so you know it's basically a teardown sitting on a small lot in a mediocre neighborhood. George shuffled papers, avoiding eye contact. According to the most recent assessment by the county, the property in its current condition has a market value of approximately $147,000. Required repairs to bring it to code would exceed $70,000. Richard's laughter got louder. The sound bounced off the paneled walls, harsh and grating. Oh, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Maggie stuck you with the money pit, Beck. The white elephant. You know what this means? She cut you out. She punished you for something, and this is how she did it. Rebecca's jaw tightened. Her molars ground together hard enough to send pain shooting up into her temples. She didn't punish me. Really? Because we're walking out of here with $2.5 million in liquid assets, and you're getting a house that's going to cost you more to demolish than it's worth. Stephanie's voice cut in, softer than Richard's, but no less condescending. Rebecca, listen, I know this is hard. If you need help with the demolition costs, I might be able to loan you some money. At a reasonable rate, of course. The offer landed in the room like a stone thrown into still water. Ripples of implication spreading outward. Charity, pity. The younger sister who'd need help because she couldn't manage on her own. Rebecca stood up. The chair scraped against hardwood, loud in the too-quiet room. I don't need your money. She reached across the table. George handed her a heavy brass keyring with 3 keys attached. Old metal, tarnished green in spots, the kind that opened locks made before people worried about security systems. Richard grabbed his coat from the back of his chair, still chuckling. Suit yourself, little sister. Let me know when the roof caves in. First round's on me tonight, Steph. We've got millions to celebrate. They left. Just walked out, Richard's laughter trailing behind them down the hallway, Stephanie's heels clicking a sharp rhythm against tile. The door swung shut with a soft pneumatic hiss. Rebecca stood alone with George in the conference room. The attorney packed papers into the folder with methodical precision, not looking at her. Rebecca. She turned. I tried to talk her out of it. I told Margaret the division was wildly disproportionate. She was entirely lucid when she made these changes. Stubborn as hell. When did she change it? 6 months ago, right after her hospital stay in March. Rebecca remembered March. Pneumonia. Maggie had nearly died. Richard had visited for 20 minutes, taken a phone call in the hallway, and left. Stephanie had sent flowers. Once. George finally met her eyes. She said something I didn't understand. She said, cash is for people who want to fly away. Property is for people who want to build. I don't know what she meant, but I'm sorry. Don't be. Rebecca slipped the keys into her jacket pocket. They settled against her thigh, cold and heavy. Grandma always had her reasons. The walk from Morrison's office to 47 Harlow Ridge took 40 minutes in the rain. Rebecca couldn't afford the parking downtown, and the bus would have required 2 transfers. She walked. Let the rain soak through her jacket, her jeans, her sneakers with the worn-out soles. By the time she reached the house, water had found every seam, every gap, every opening. Kit stood waiting on the covered porch of the neighbor's building next door. Mrs. Chen, bless her, had let him wait inside until she saw Rebecca coming. Now he stood with his backpack on both shoulders, hood up, hands shoved deep in his pockets. The coat was too small, had been too small since last winter. The sleeve stopped 3 inches above his wrists, and the zipper wouldn't close anymore. Rebecca had safety pinned it shut. He looked at the house, then at her, then back at the house. Mom, I know. It looks like it's gonna fall down. It just needs love, buddy. Kit's expression said exactly what he thought about that assessment. The kid was 8, but sometimes looked at the world like he'd already lived twice that long. Old eyes in a young face. Divorce did that to children. Poverty did that faster. That's what you said about Dad. The words hit harder than he probably meant them to. Rebecca crouched down to his level, rainwater running off her hood in steady streams. This is different. The house can't walk away. What nobody in that attorney's office knew, what Richard and Stephanie couldn't possibly understand, was this. 2 nights before Maggie died, she'd grabbed Rebecca's hand. Hard. Fingers like bird bones wrapped in paper-thin skin, but the grip was steel. Her eyes, clouded with morphine but sharp underneath, had locked onto Rebecca's face. They took the bait, love. You got the real treasure. Rebecca had thought it was the drugs talking. The hospice nurse had warned her that end-stage patients often said strange things. Hallucinations, confusion, the brain misfiring in its final hours. But Maggie had squeezed her hand one more time, pulled her close, whispered against her ear. Start where the fire lived. Then she'd fallen back against the pillows, breathing shallow and wet, and those were the last coherent words she'd spoken. 12 hours later, she was gone. Rebecca straightened up, took Kit's hand. Come on, let's see what we're dealing with. The house loomed. Victorian, built in 1889 according to the tax records Rebecca had looked up years ago. 3 stories of peeling paint, sagging porch rails, windows with cracks spiderwebbing across the glass. The turret on the west corner tilted just slightly, like a drunk leaning against a wall. Shingles missing from the roof in patches, gutters hanging loose, clogged with years of leaves and debris, but underneath the decay, bones of something beautiful remained. The gingerbread trim, rotted in places but still showing the intricate carved patterns. The stained glass transom above the front door, somehow still intact, throwing colored light onto the porch when the sun hit it right. Wide plank flooring visible through gaps in the porch boards. Rebecca unlocked the front door. The deadbolt stuck, required 2 hands and significant force to turn. The door swung inward with a groan of hinges that hadn't seen oil in a decade. The smell hit first. Dust, mildew, old wood. Something musty and organic that spoke of water damage and time. But underneath, something else. Lavender. Maggie's soap. Like she was still there, just in the next room, about to call out and ask if anyone wanted tea. Kit stepped inside, his sneakers leaving wet prints on the hardwood. He looked up. The ceiling stretched high, ornate crown molding barely visible under layers of grime. A chandelier hung in the entryway, half its crystals missing, the others coated in dust so thick they looked gray instead of clear. How long did Great-Grandma Maggie live here? Since 1974. 50 years. By herself? After your great-grandfather left? Yeah, just her. Kit walked further in, running his hand along the banister of the grand staircase. The wood was smooth under the dust, polished by decades of hands gripping it while climbing to the second floor. His fingers left trails in the grime. Rebecca moved through the first floor, cataloging damage. The kitchen still had the old wallpaper, a faded floral pattern from the 1960s, peeling away from the walls in long strips. The linoleum curled up at the edges, revealing the original hardwood underneath. Cabinet doors hung crooked on broken hinges. The sink had a rust stain running from faucet to drain. But the bones. God, the bones of this place. Original fixtures. Clawfoot tub visible through the bathroom door. Built-in shelving in what looked like a library or study. Crown molding, wainscoting, details that modern houses didn't bother with anymore because labor was expensive and craftsmanship was a dying art. She found Kit in the library, standing in front of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Empty now. Maggie's books had been donated to the public library months ago, before she got too sick to make decisions about that kind of thing. Mom, there's no heat. I know. It's cold. I know, buddy. Are we gonna live here? Rebecca looked around the room. Water stains on the ceiling. Window that didn't quite close all the way, letting in a draft that stirred the dust on the floor. But also, built-in window seats, original light fixtures, a fireplace with a carved mantel that must have cost a fortune when it was installed. Yeah, we're gonna live here. How? Good question. Rebecca's bank account currently held $1,203. Property taxes would come due in 45 days. $4,100. She'd looked it up online while waiting for the will to be read, sitting in the attorney's waiting room, preparing herself for whatever Maggie had decided. If she didn't pay, the county would put a lien on the property. Eventually, foreclose. She'd lose the house before she ever really had it. We'll figure it out. Kit sat down on the window seat, dust puffed up around him. He pulled his knees to his chest, wrapped his arms around them. Tyler said we're poor. Tullers a yerk. He said my coat looks like it came from a dumpster. Rebecca's chest tightened. She crossed the room, sat next to him on the window seat. The wood creaked under their combined weight. Tyler doesn't know anything about us. But he's right. We are poor. We're careful with money. There's a difference. Kit rested his head on her shoulder, smelled like kid sweat and the strawberry shampoo they got from the dollar store. I wish Great-Grandma Maggie was still here. Me too, buddy. They sat in the cold library as rain continued to fall outside, the sound steady against the windows, and Rebecca tried not to think about how far $4,000 was from $1,200. That night, after they'd gone back to their apartment, after Kit had fallen asleep in his too-small bed with his too-thin blanket, Rebecca sat at their kitchen table and went through Maggie's things. The attorney had given her 3 boxes of personal effects. Photographs, mostly. Maggie standing next to boats in various harbors. Maggie with employees from Thornton Maritime Recovery, the salvage business she'd built from nothing in the 1970s. Maggie younger, sharper, standing on a dock with her hands on her hips and a look in her eyes that said she'd fight anyone who got in her way. One photo caught Rebecca's attention. Maggie maybe 40 years old, standing next to a man, tall, weathered face, captain's hat pushed back on his head, his arm around Maggie's shoulders, both of them smiling at the camera like they shared a secret. On the back, in Maggie's handwriting, James and me, 1,974, the Celine job. Rebecca had never heard of James. Maggie had been alone for as long as Rebecca could remember. No husband, no boyfriend, just her and the business and this house. At the bottom of the second box, underneath more photographs and some old tax returns, Rebecca found the journal. Leather-bound. Old. The kind of thing someone bought intending to fill it with important thoughts and then only used sporadically. The binding cracked when she opened it. The pages were thick paper, slightly yellowed, covered in Maggie's handwriting. Cramped, efficient script, slanting to the right. Most of it was mundane. Dates and times for salvage jobs, notes about equipment maintenance, weather reports. But tucked in the middle, marked with a red ribbon, one page stood out. The handwriting was different here. Larger, more deliberate. Like Maggie had wanted to make absolutely sure whoever found this could read it. The house is the vault, dear. The heart is stone, the blood is water. Start where the fire lived. Rebecca read it 3 times. Turned the page. Nothing. Turned back. Same message. No explanation. No context. She flipped through the rest of the journal. More salvage notes. Lists of equipment. Inventory of recovered goods from various jobs. Then, near the back, another marked page. This one with a small sketch. The sketch was rough but recognizable. A kitchen. Old-fashioned stove. The kind that burned wood or coal. Behind it, a wall. And on that wall, a small X marked in red ink. Rebecca looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Kit had school tomorrow. She had a shift doing bookkeeping for a local plumber, remote work, paid by the hour, barely enough to cover groceries. She should sleep. Instead, she grabbed her jacket. The house was dark when she let herself in, using the keys George had given her. No electricity. She'd checked with the utility company. Service had been shut off after Maggie died, when the bills went unpaid. Reconnecting would cost a deposit she didn't have. Rebecca used her phone flashlight. The beam cut through darkness, illuminating dust particles floating in still air. The kitchen. She found it on the first floor, rear of the house. The wallpaper here was worse than she'd remembered from earlier, not just peeling, actively hanging off the walls in sheets. Water damage from a leak in the ceiling had turned whole sections brown and brittle. Behind where the old stove would have been, assuming the journal sketch was accurate, was a wall. Brick, covered in old plaster, painted over multiple times in layers visible where the paint had chipped. Rebecca knocked on the wall. Solid. She moved along it, knocking every foot. Solid, solid, solid. Then, hollow. She knocked again. Definitely hollow. Different sound. Empty space behind. Her hands shook as she pulled at the loose wallpaper, tearing it away in long strips. Beneath the paper, plaster. Beneath the plaster in one section, where the hollow sound was loudest, loose bricks. Rebecca used her keys as a makeshift tool, wedging them between bricks, prying. Mortar crumbled. Old, degraded by time and moisture. The bricks came away easier than they should have. Behind the bricks, a cavity, maybe 2 feet wide, 1 foot tall, cut into the old chimney structure. And inside the cavity, a box. Metal. Green paint flaking off to reveal rust underneath. Not locked, just latched. Military-style ammunition box, the kind designed to survive rough handling and bad weather. Rebecca pulled it out, heavy. She set it on the floor, knelt next to it, and flipped the latches. Inside, a stack of letters bound with string, a single gold coin, a brass key with a paper tag tied to it, and a note card. She picked up the note card first. Maggie's handwriting again, but shakier than in the journal. Recent, probably. For Rebecca, use the coin for taxes. The key opens the first door. Love. Gran. The gold coin was heavy in her palm. Rebecca turned it over. Krugerrand. South African. 1 ounce of gold. She looked it up on her phone. Current value. Approximately $2,400. The key had a tag. Portland Mercantile Bank. Box 247. And the letters. Rebecca untied the string, let them fall open in her lap, dozens of them. All addressed to my dearest Maggie. All signed yours always, J.H. She opened one at random, dated October 1973. The handwriting was masculine, angular. My dearest Maggie. The work continues. Another 3 weeks at least before we can return to port. But when we do, I promise you that dinner at the place you love, the one with the view of the harbor. Tell the girls I'll bring them something special. They're growing up so fast without me there. I miss you. I miss home. The sea is cold this time of year. Yours always, J.H. Another, dated March 1974. My dearest Maggie, I need you to trust me on this next job. The Celine is damaged, but salvageable. The cargo is valuable, but complicated. Legal gray area, which you know I hate, but the opportunity is too big to pass up. If we do this right, we'll have enough to buy that property you've been eyeing, the big Victorian on Harlow Ridge. You could quit the cannery. I could quit taking these long-haul contracts. We could build something permanent, something that lasts. Yours always, J.H. Rebecca's hands trembled as she read. Maggie had never mentioned any of this, never talked about James, or salvage work, or how she'd afforded to buy a house in 1974 when she'd been a single mother working in fish canneries. The last letter was dated November 1974. The handwriting was rushed, nearly illegible in places. Maggie, if you're reading this, something went wrong. The Celine went down faster than we anticipated. I don't know if I'll make it. The cargo is secured on your boat. Do what we discussed. Keep it quiet. Keep it safe. The girls need you. I love you. I'm sorry. J.H. Rebecca sat on the cold kitchen floor, surrounded by letters from a dead man to her dead grandmother, holding a gold coin and a key, and tried to piece together what the hell Maggie had been involved in. The coin dealer's shop in downtown Portland was small, wedged between a pawn shop and a Vietnamese restaurant. The sign said Northwest Numismatics. Rebecca had called ahead, made an appointment, brought the single Krugerrand. The dealer's name was David Sterling. Bald, maybe 60, with jeweler's loops hanging on a chain around his neck. He examined the coin under bright light, turning it over, checking the weight on a precise scale. 1,974 mint. Pristine condition. No wear. You've been storing this well. It was my grandmother's. Smart woman. Gold's been climbing. I can give you spot price minus 5%. Cash or check? Cash. She walked out with $2,300 in $100 bills, feeling like a criminal even though she'd done nothing wrong. The money felt too easy, too clean for something that had been hidden behind a wall. But it was enough. Enough for property taxes with some left over. Enough to breathe for a minute. Portland Mercantile Bank occupied a brick building downtown, the kind that survived earthquakes and economic crashes through sheer stubbornness and good foundation work. Inside, marble floors, high ceilings, the smell of money and old wood. Rebecca approached the counter with the brass key. The teller, young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile, examined the key and its tag. Box 247. One moment, please. She disappeared into a back room, returned with a manager. Older man, gray suit, reading glasses on a chain. Miss Clark? I'm Harold Mitchell. Box 247 hasn't been accessed since 1998. We'll need to verify your identity and your legal right to access it. Rebecca produced Maggie's death certificate, the will, her own ID. The manager examined everything with bureaucratic thoroughness, then nodded. Everything appears in order. If you'll follow me. The vault was exactly what vaults should be. Heavy steel door, climate-controlled interior, rows of safe deposit boxes lining the walls. Harold used the bank's master key in combination with Rebecca's key to open box 247. I'll give you privacy. Press the call button when you're finished. He left. The door clicked shut behind him. Rebecca pulled out the long metal box and set it on the table in the center of the room. Lifted the lid. Papers, stacks of them, but not just any papers, bearer bonds. She recognized them from her accounting background, old-fashioned financial instruments. Whoever held them owned them. No names. No registration. Just possession. 15 bonds total, each one with a face value of $10,000. issued between 1,975 and 1,980. Maturity date, 25 years from issue. And underneath the bonds, another note from Maggie. Rebecca, I bought these with clean money from the business. They matured in 2005. Current value? Check with a broker. But Rebecca, this isn't the treasure. This is grocery money. Keep looking. The real wealth is in the walls. Macia. Rebecca's phone buzzed. Text from Kit's school. He'd forgotten his lunch. Could she drop it off? She carefully placed everything back in the box, locked it, pressed the call button. Harold returned, escorted her out. She was late picking up lunch from their apartment, late getting it to the school, late for everything because her brain was still stuck in that vault, doing math. 15 bonds, 10,000 each face value, matured 20 years ago, with compound interest over 40+ years. She needed a professional. Melissa Garrett's office was in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation service. Financial advisor, certified planner, the kind of person who helped regular people navigate money without charging Wall Street rates. Rebecca had found her through an online search, picked her because the reviews mentioned she was patient with clients who didn't know financial jargon. That was Rebecca. Everything she knew about money came from bookkeeping classes and hard experience stretching paychecks that never stretched far enough. Melissa was younger than her website photo suggested. Maybe 40, professional but not stuffy. She examined the photographs Rebecca had taken of the bonds. These are legitimate. Old, but legitimate. You'll need to cash them through a broker, not a bank. And you'll need to declare them. IRS will want their cut. How much are they worth? Melissa pulled up a calculator, started running numbers. Face value is 10,000 each, 15 bonds. But they've been accruing interest since issue. 30-year Treasury bonds from the late 70s typically ran around 9%, compounded annually over 45 years, then matured and sitting dormant for another 20. More typing. More calculations. Rough estimate? You're looking at approximately $280,000 total. The number hit Rebecca like cold water. She'd been expecting maybe 50,000. Maybe less. You're sure? Won't know exactly until we cash them in, but yes, these things are gold mines if they've been held this long. The catch is taxes. Federal capital gains, possibly state, depending on how they were acquired. You'll walk away with maybe $210,000 after everything's filed properly. Rebecca sat back in the cheap office chair, staring at the photos on Melissa's phone. What do I do? First, we cash in 3 bonds. Get you some immediate capital. Pay your property taxes. Get breathing room. The rest, we hold and develop a strategy. This much money, you need to be smart. Get a CPA involved. Make sure everything's documented and legal. 3 bonds. $42,000 after taxes. Enough to pay property taxes with $37,000 left over. Enough to fix the furnace, repair the roof. Buy Kit a winter coat that actually fit. Rebecca looked at Melissa. Let's do it. The money hit Rebecca's account 4 days later. She paid property taxes online, watching the balance drop by $4,100, feeling both relief and terror. Money going out always hurt worse than money coming in. Next call. Paul Brennan, contractor. Mrs. Chen next door had recommended him. Irish guy, did good work, fair prices, wouldn't rip off a single mother. Paul showed up the next afternoon in a truck that had seen better decades, toolbox rattling in the bed. Late 40s, weathered face, hands that looked like they'd rebuilt half of Portland. The accent was subtle but there, softened by years in the States, but still present in certain words. Rebecca met him on the porch. Mrs. Chen said, "You need work done. Furnace is dead. Roof's leaking in 3 places. Electrical is probably a fire hazard." Paul walked around the house, making notes on a clipboard. Climbed into the attic, came back down covered in insulation dust. Checked the basement, the foundation, the plumbing. 45 minutes later, he sat down with Rebecca at the kitchen table and showed her the numbers. Furnace replacement, you're looking at 8,000. Roof patch job to get you through winter, another 4. Electrical to bring it to code, minimum 6. That's just the critical stuff. To really fix this place, you're talking 60,000-70,000 easy. Rebecca's stomach dropped. What if I just do the furnace? You'll freeze less, but the roof will still leak and the wiring might burn the place down. And if I do nothing? Paul looked around the kitchen, at the water-stained ceiling, the outlet that sparked when you plugged anything in, the window that wouldn't fully close. You got a kid living here? Moving in next week. Then you do the critical work. No negotiation. Rebecca did the math in her head. 18,000 for the must-haves. She had 37 after taxes. That left 19,000 for everything else. Food, utilities, Kit's needs, car repairs when the check engine light finally meant something catastrophic. Okay, let's do it. Paul nodded, started writing up a contract, then stopped, looked at her. Your grandmother was Margaret Thornton, yeah? You knew her? She helped my family in '87. We'd just come over from Galway. Recession hit hard. My da couldn't find work anywhere. We were about to lose everything. Your gran hired him for Thornton Maritime. Didn't ask about papers, didn't ask about experience, just gave him a job. Kept us afloat until we got proper status. I don't forget kindness like that. He crossed out a number on the contract, wrote in a lower one. I'll do the furnace for 6, the roof for 3. Electrical I can't discount much, but I'll throw in some extra work. Call it 16 total. Rebecca's throat tightened. You don't have to. I want to. Your gran was good people. Figure I owe her this much. The work started the next day. Paul showed up at 7 a.m. with a helper, a young guy named Danny who didn't talk much but worked like he had something to prove. They tore into the basement, hauled out the old furnace in pieces, installed new ductwork. Kit helped sometimes, handing tools, asking questions. Paul was patient with him, explaining how things worked, why certain pipes went certain directions, teaching the kind of practical knowledge schools didn't bother with anymore. Why'd you become a contractor? Kit's question came while they were working in the basement. Paul on his back under the new furnace, Kit sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor. Started helping my da when I was about your age. Learned by doing. Turns out I was good at it. Do you like it? Most days. Good, honest work. You build something, you see it, you know it's real. Not like pushing papers around or staring at screens. My mom pushes papers around. Paul slid out from under the furnace, wiped grease from his hands. Your mom takes care of you. That's the hardest work there is. The new furnace kicked on 2 days later. Heat flowed through the vents for the first time in months. The house made settling noises as it warmed, wood expanding, metal ductwork ticking. Kit ran from room to room, feeling the warm air, grinning like he'd discovered fire. That night, Rebecca and Kit slept in the house for the first time. Sleeping bags on the floor of what would eventually be Kit's bedroom. No furniture yet, no curtains, but heat, and a roof that didn't leak directly over their heads. Kit fell asleep fast, the way kids do when they're exhausted and warm and feel safe. Rebecca lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Maggie's note. This isn't the treasure. The real wealth is in the walls. What else had Maggie hidden? If your grandmother left you money earned in a gray area 50 years ago, would you take it? Would you ask questions? Or would you just be grateful? Rebecca didn't know the answer. Only knew she'd cashed the bonds, paid her taxes, done everything legally. Whatever Maggie had been involved in with James and the Celine, it was 50 years past. The statute of limitations on salvage complications was 7 years. Whatever happened in 1974 was buried under decades of legitimate business operations and expired legal windows. But still, the question nagged. 3 days after the furnace went in, Kit came home from school different. Shoulders back, head up. The safety pin holding his coat closed was gone, replaced by a working zipper on a new coat. Clearance rack at Target, but new. The right size. Dark blue with orange lining. Tyler had noticed at lunch. Where'd you get money, Martinez? Your mom deal drugs? Kit had looked him dead in the eye. None of your business. And walked away. First time he'd ever stood up to Tyler. First time he'd felt like he had something worth defending. He told Rebecca about it that night while they ate pizza on the floor of the library. Still no furniture, still camping in their own house. I didn't tell him about the house or the money or anything. Just said it wasn't his business. Good. Tyler's just jealous anyway. His dad's in jail. How do you know that? Everybody knows. His mom picks him up in a car with a broken window covered with plastic. He's mean because his life is bad. 8 years old and already understanding that hurt people hurt people. Rebecca wondered when exactly her kid had grown up enough to grasp that kind of complexity. Doesn't make it okay that he's mean. I know. But I get it. Like, I get why. They ate in silence for a while, grease from cheap pizza dripping onto paper plates. Mom? Yeah? Are we gonna be okay? Rebecca looked around the library. Fresh paint on one wall where Paul had patched water damage. New baseboards where the old ones had rotted. Slow progress, but progress. Yeah, buddy. We're gonna be okay. That night, after Kit was asleep, Rebecca opened Maggie's journal again. The page with the kitchen sketch was marked. She'd found that cash, used the coin, accessed the bonds, gotten breathing room. She flipped through more pages, salvage logs, dates and locations, equipment inventories. Then, 20 pages deeper, another marked page. This one had a different sketch. The library. This library, recognizable by the window configuration. The drawing showed built-in bookshelves. One specific section was circled, and next to it, handwritten text. Behind the words, the paper hides paper. Rebecca stood in the library doorway, looking at the built-in shelves. Empty now except for dust. The shelves Paul hadn't needed to repair because they were solid oak, built to last centuries. Her phone buzzed. Text from Richard. Saw the county records. You paid property taxes. In full. Where'd you get the money? She typed back. Loan. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. From who? Prive Linda. You're lying. Rebecca didn't respond. Turned her phone face down on the window seat. Let him wonder. Let him stew in whatever paranoid theories he was cooking up, because Maggie was right. They'd taken the bait, the cash payout, the easy money, while Rebecca got the real treasure. Not just money, not just a house, but time, space, possibility, a chance to build something that lasted. She walked to the bookshelf Maggie had marked in the journal, ran her fingers along the edges, looking for seams, for hidden latches, for anything that suggested this was more than just shelves. Behind the words. The paper hides paper. Tomorrow. She'd figure it out tomorrow. Tonight, she was too tired. Her body ached from hauling boxes, from scrubbing floors, from the constant low-level stress of having money in the bank, but knowing it was finite and would run out faster than she wanted. Rebecca climbed into her sleeping bag next to Kit's in the bedroom they were sharing until she could afford beds. The house settled around them, making the sounds old houses make. Creaks and groans and whispers. Not haunted. Just alive. Just breathing. Her last thought before sleep took her was Maggie's handwriting in that journal. Deliberate. Precise. Every word chosen carefully. The real wealth is in the walls. Not was hidden. Not had been left. Is, present tense. Still there. Still waiting. Whatever Maggie had built, whatever she'd saved, whatever she'd hidden across 50 years in this house, Rebecca was going to find it. Not just for the money, though God knew they needed it, but because Maggie had trusted her with this, had chosen her, had known somehow that Rebecca would stay when everyone else left. And staying, it turned out, was the whole point. 3 months changed the house in ways Rebecca hadn't thought possible on her budget. The furnace hummed reliably in the basement. The roof held against January storms that battered Portland with wind and horizontal rain. Paul had fixed the worst of the electrical, enough that Rebecca could run space heaters in the rooms they actually used without worrying about fire. She'd moved them in fully now. Real beds from a liquidation sale. Mattresses that were firm enough Kit didn't complain. Kitchen table from Goodwill. Solid oak under layers of someone else's paint that Rebecca was slowly stripping in the evenings after Kit went to sleep. The library had become her workspace. She'd set up her laptop on a card table, running bookkeeping jobs for 3 different clients. Small businesses that needed someone to track expenses and reconcile accounts but couldn't afford a full-time accountant. $8 an hour. She pulled maybe 30 hours a week when the work was there. Kit's room was on the 2nd floor, the one with windows facing east, so morning sun woke him naturally. He'd started helping with restoration work on weekends. Small stuff, holding tools, sanding baseboards, learning the difference between Phillips and flathead, between load-bearing and decorative, between work that mattered and work that was just cosmetic. The change in him was visible. He stood taller walking to school, made eye contact with teachers, brought home a math test with 94% circled in red at the top. When Tyler made some comment about his shoes, Kit had shrugged. At least mine don't have holes. Tyler hadn't had a comeback for that. Rebecca had sold 2 more bonds through Melissa's broker contact. Another $84,000 after taxes. She'd put $60,000 in a high-yield savings account, untouchable except for emergencies. The remaining $24,000 went into the house. New windows for the first floor. Insulation in the attic. Plumbing repairs that prevented the toilet from running all night, wasting water and money. Slow progress. Methodical. Each improvement carefully chosen for maximum impact per dollar spent. She hadn't told Richard or Stephanie about any of it. Richard's texts had continued for the first month. Questions about where she'd gotten money, accusations that she was hiding assets, threats about lawyers and audits and making her life difficult. Rebecca had stopped responding after the first week. Let the messages pile up, unread, their notification badges growing like aggressive mold. Stephanie had been quieter. A few calls that went to voicemail. One text asking if Rebecca wanted to grab coffee. Rebecca had replied with a polite no, citing work deadlines that were real enough even if they weren't the actual reason. The truth was simpler. She didn't trust them. Didn't want them in this house, seeing the progress, asking questions she had no interest in answering. Maggie's journal sat in Rebecca's nightstand drawer. She'd read it cover to cover 4 times, memorizing the salvage logs, the equipment inventories, the cryptic notes about jobs that had gone well and jobs that had complications. The marked pages stood out, 3 of them total. Kitchen wall, which she'd found. Library shelf, which she hadn't figured out yet. And one more toward the back of the journal, a sketch of what looked like wallpaper with text underneath. Layers hide truth. Remove the surface. That one had been bothering her for weeks. The phone rang Tuesday afternoon while Rebecca was reconciling receipts for a plumbing contractor in Beaverton. Unknown number. Portland area code. She answered out of habit, still typing with one hand. Rebecca Clark. Becca. It's Stephanie. Rebecca stopped typing. Stephanie hadn't called her Becca since they were teenagers. The nickname landed wrong now, too familiar for people who'd become strangers. What do you need? Stephanie's voice cracked. Actual emotion, not the performed kind she usually deployed. Can we talk? We're talking now. In person. Please. I know you're busy with the house and everything, but I really need... I'm working. I know. God, this is harder than I thought. Rebecca waited. Let silence do the work. Stephanie's breath came through the phone, shaky and uneven. Andrew found out about the business. The consulting firm. He went through my accounts. He knows I spent almost $400,000 in 8 months on a company that never landed a single client. That's between you and Andrew. He's filing for divorce. Taking everything. The house, the cars, even the joint savings we'd built before Maggie died. His lawyer says because I wasted marital assets on a failed venture, he's entitled to compensation from my inheritance. Rebecca pulled up a spreadsheet, entered numbers while Stephanie talked. The work didn't stop just because family drama erupted. I'm down to maybe $80,000 left from what Maggie gave me. If Andrew's lawyer wins, I'll have nothing. I'll be starting over at 40 with no job, no husband, no money. Sounds rough. That's it? That's all you have to say? Rebecca saved the spreadsheet, closed the laptop. What do you want me to say, Stephanie? That I'm sorry your fake company failed? That I feel bad you burned through $1 million in less than a year while I'm scraping by on bookkeeping gigs? I want. Stephanie stopped. Started again. I saw the county records. You've been making improvements to the house. New roof. New furnace. Those aren't cheap. Paul gave me a discount. How big a discount? Because I got quotes for my rental property last year, and a new furnace alone was $12,000. Paul owed Maggie a favor. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Stephanie's voice shifted. The desperation underneath hardened into something sharper. Did Maggie leave you something else? Something she didn't tell George about? She left me a house. A house you couldn't afford to keep. A house that was falling apart. And now suddenly you've got money for repairs? Rebecca stood up, walked to the library window. Outside, rain fell in sheets, turning the street into a river of gray water and fallen leaves. I saved money. I work. I budget. Novel concepts for you, I know. You're hiding something. Goodbye, Stephanie. Wait. Rebecca hung up, turned off her phone, stood at the window watching rain hammer the glass and felt something cold settle in her chest. They weren't going to let this go. Richard with his paranoid accusations, Stephanie with her desperate financial situation, both of them circling, sniffing for blood, convinced Rebecca had gotten more than she deserved. The worst part was, they weren't entirely wrong. She'd found the bonds, used them, kept quiet about it because Maggie's note had been clear. This isn't the treasure. Keep looking. Don't tell. But how much more was there? And how long before her siblings' suspicions turned into something actionable? Rebecca opened her laptop again, pulled up Maggie's journal scans she'd photographed and saved, the page with the wallpaper sketch. The note, layers hide truth, remove the surface. The study was the only room she hadn't touched yet. Original wallpaper still intact, a faded pattern of ships and anchors that must have been installed sometime in the 1960s. Water damage had stained whole sections brown, and in places the paper bubbled away from the plaster underneath. She grabbed a putty knife from Paul's toolbox in the kitchen, went to the study, and started peeling. The wallpaper came away in long strips, releasing dust and the smell of old paste. Underneath, another layer. Older pattern, geometric shapes in green and cream. She peeled that too. Underneath that, painted plaster. And underneath the paint, something else. Rebecca scraped carefully at the paint. It flaked away in chips, revealing pencil markings on the bare plaster wall. Numbers. Coordinates, by the look of it. 45-31, 123-56. And below that, a drawing. Rough sketch of a ship. Single word written underneath in Maggie's handwriting. Celine. Rebecca photographed the wall with her phone, then pulled up Google Maps. Entered the coordinates. The pin dropped on the Oregon coast, just south of Astoria, near a place called Cape Falcon. Remote stretch of coastline known for treacherous currents and fog that rolled in thick enough to hide anything. She opened a new browser tab, searched. The Celine ship 1974. First result was a maritime insurance blog post from 2003, someone documenting famous lost cargo ships. The Celine rated 3 paragraphs. Panamanian registered cargo vessel. Disappeared November 1974 off the Oregon coast during severe weather. Official manifest listed lumber and machine parts. Insurance paid out $2.3 million to owners. Crew of 7 presumed dead. Wreckage never recovered. Case closed 1975. Rebecca scrolled down. Most results were similar. Brief mentions in maritime disaster compilations. Nothing detailed. Nothing that explained why Maggie had hidden coordinates to the wreck site on her wall. She tried a different search. The Celine salvage 1974. Fewer results. Maritime forum posts speculating about what happened. One conspiracy theorist claiming the ship had been carrying weapons. Another insisting it was a CIA operation gone wrong. Nothing credible. Then, buried on page 3 of search results, a scanned newspaper article from the Astoria Daily Astorian, dated November 1974. Local salvage crew reports debris field. Rebecca clicked through. The scan was poor quality, text barely readable, but she could make out the essentials. Thornton Maritime Recovery, a local salvage operation, reported discovering debris consistent with cargo vessel wreckage approximately 15 miles southwest of Cape Falcon. Owner Margaret Thornton stated the company was conducting routine salvage surveys when they encountered floating cargo containers and what appeared to be ship components. Coast Guard has been notified. Investigation ongoing. Rebecca read it 3 more times. Thornton Maritime Recovery, Maggie's company. The timing matched the letters from James. November 1974, right when his last letter had been written. The one where he'd mentioned the Celine going down faster than anticipated. She pulled up the letters from the kitchen cache, found James's last message. Read it again with new context. Maggie, if you're reading this, something went wrong. The Celine went down faster than we anticipated. I don't know if I'll make it. The cargo is secured on your boat. Do what we discussed. Keep it quiet. Keep it safe. The cargo is secured on your boat. Maggie hadn't just found debris. She'd salvaged the actual cargo. Whatever the Celine had been carrying, Maggie and James had taken it before the official investigation concluded. Before the insurance paid out. Before anyone knew what was really on that ship. Rebecca searched harder. The Celine cargo manifest 1974. The Celine insurance fraud. The Celine stolen goods. Nothing concrete. but she found references in maritime law forums, discussions about gray market salvage operations in the 70s, how lax regulations had been, how easy it was to recover cargo from wrecks and sell it privately before official investigations concluded. One forum post from 2019 caught her attention. User named Salvage Historian responding to a question about famous questionable recoveries. The Celine is a legend in certain circles. Word is it was carrying stolen art and antiquities from Scottish estates. Insurance scam. Ship was supposed to sink, so owners could collect while selling the real cargo on the black market. But the ship actually did sink during a storm, and some local salvage crew intercepted the cargo before the owners could recover it. The art disappeared, never surfaced on the legitimate market, never recovered by authorities. Perfect crime, if it really happened. But it's probably just maritime folklore. Rebecca's hands trembled on the keyboard. Scottish art theft. That matched the timeline. The UK had seen a wave of estate burglaries in the late 60s and early 70s. Organized rings targeting wealthy families, stealing paintings and sculptures, selling them internationally. If the Celine had been carrying stolen art, and Maggie had salvaged it and kept it quiet for 50 years, the front door slammed open downstairs. Rebecca jumped, nearly knocking her laptop off the card table. Heavy footsteps in the foyer. Too heavy to be Kit. He was at school for another hour. "Rebecca, I know you're here." Richard's voice, slurred slightly, anger vibrating underneath. Rebecca grabbed her phone, turned it back on. Thought about calling 911. Decided to see what he wanted first. She walked to the top of the stairs, looked down. Richard stood in the entryway, soaked from rain, hair plastered to his skull. He'd lost weight since the will reading. His suit hung loose, and his face had a gaunt quality that spoke of missed meals and poor sleep. "How'd you get in?" "Pick the lock. You should upgrade your security. You should leave before I call the police." Richard laughed. Hollow sound that echoed in the high-ceilinged entryway. "Go ahead. Call them. Tell them your brother broke into his dead grandmother's house. See how much they care. It's my house now." "Is it?" He took a step toward the stairs. "Because I've been thinking about that. About how Maggie could afford to buy this place in 1974. She was working in canneries, single mother with 2 kids. And somehow she scraped together enough to buy a Victorian mansion." Rebecca descended halfway down the stairs, keeping distance between them. "She built a business. She worked hard. She built a business with money that came from somewhere. And I think I know where." "You're drunk. I'm desperate. There's a difference." He pulled out his phone, fumbled with it, turned the screen toward her. Bank account screenshot. Balance, $847.52. That's what I have left. $8,700 out of $1.25 million. You want to know where the rest went? I don't care where. Bad investments, worse decisions, and a cocaine habit that got expensive when my dealer started charging premium because I couldn't pay on time. He lowered the phone. "I'm ruined, Becca. Completely ruined. My business partners are suing me. My creditors are circling. And I've got people who are going to hurt me very badly if I don't come up with $80,000 in the next 2 weeks. Rebecca's chest tightened. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was dangerous. That's not my problem. It could be your solution. Because I know you found something. The roof, the furnace, the improvements you're making. You didn't get that from bookkeeping. Maggie left you more than the house. She left me bonds. I declared them. Paid taxes. It's legal and documented." Richard's eyes narrowed. "How much?" "None of your business." "How much, Rebecca?" "Enough for repairs, not enough for your drug debts." He took another step up the stairs. Rebecca backed up one. "I need money. Real money. And if Maggie hid bonds in this house, she hid other things. I know how she operated. She didn't trust banks. She converted assets to physical goods and stashed them. You don't know that. I do. Because I listened when she talked about the old days, about how she and James used to salvage cargo and sell it privately, how they built Thornton Maritime on cash deals and handshake agreements. His voice cracked. "She told me stories, Becca. When I was a kid, before I stopped visiting, she talked about the Celine." Rebecca's blood went cold. "What did she tell you?" "Enough to know there's more in this house than bearer bonds." He climbed another stair. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me what else you found, or I'm going to tear this place apart until I find it myself. Paul's voice came from the doorway behind Richard. No, you're not. Richard spun. Paul stood in the open doorway, rain dripping off his jacket, holding a hammer in one hand. Not threatening, just present, just there. Who the hell are you? Paul Brennan. I'm the contractor who installed the furnace you're standing near, and I'm asking you, politely, to leave. This is family business. This is trespassing. You broke in. Rebecca doesn't want you here. That makes it simple. Richard looked between them, calculation running behind his eyes. He was desperate but not stupid. Paul had 40 pounds on him, and the kind of build that came from decades of physical labor. A fight would end badly. This isn't over. Richard pointed at Rebecca. Maggie owed me more than this. She owed all of us more, and I'm going to prove she hid assets. Then hire a lawyer. Paul stepped aside, clearing the doorway. File proper motions. Do it legally. But right now, you need to walk out. Richard descended the stairs slowly, maintaining eye contact with Rebecca the whole way. When he reached the door, he stopped. I'll get a lawyer. I'll audit this estate. And when I find what you're hiding, I'm taking half. He left. The door slammed behind him. Sound echoed through the empty house. Paul locked the door, tested it, then looked up at Rebecca. You okay? Not really. He's using? Cocaine. He admitted it. That explains the eyes. And the weight loss. Paul set the hammer down on the hall table. He meant what he said about the lawyer. I know. You got everything documented? The bonds, the taxes, all of it? Yes. Then he can audit all he wants. He won't find anything illegal. Rebecca sat down on the stairs, elbows on her knees, head in her hands. There might be more. More what? More that Maggie hid. I don't know what exactly, but she left notes, clues. And I think Richard might be right about one thing. She converted assets to physical goods and hid them in the house. Paul pulled over a step stool from the hallway, sat down facing her. That's not illegal if she owned the goods legitimately. But what if she didn't? What if she salvaged cargo from a ship that was carrying stolen property? 50 years ago? 49. November 1974. Paul let out a long breath. Statute of limitations on salvage disputes is 7 years. Property crimes depends on the state, but federally it's 5 for most things. After 50 years, even if the goods were questionable, you're in the clear legally. Original owners, original insurers, everyone's been compensated or moved on. Are you sure? My cousin's a maritime lawyer in Boston. I can call him if you want confirmation, but yeah, I'm sure. Rebecca looked up. Would you? Call him? Already planning on it. Paul stood, picked up his hammer. But Rebecca, whatever you find, you need to document it. Photograph it. Get appraisals. Do everything by the book. Because Richard's going to come after you legally now, and the only defense is paperwork. The lawsuit papers arrived 4 days later. Certified mail, thick envelope, official court stamps. Rebecca signed for it with Kit watching from the kitchen, eating cereal before school. She waited until he left, then opened it. Richard Thornton versus Rebecca Clark and the estate of Margaret Thornton. Petition for accounting and redistribution of estate assets. Claim. Undisclosed assets existed within the estate that were not properly inventoried during probate. Request. Full forensic accounting of Rebecca's finances since Maggie's death, and redistribution of any discovered assets among all heirs. Rebecca read it twice. Her hands didn't shake. She'd expected this. She called the number on the business card Paul had given her. Jennifer Mason, attorney. Jennifer had handled Paul's business incorporation and various contract disputes. Paul vouched for her toughness and her reasonable rates. Jennifer's office was in a converted house in southeast Portland, professional but not fancy. The kind of place that suggested competence without charging Wall Street prices. Jennifer herself was late 40s, sharp-featured, salt and pepper hair cut short. She read through Richard's petition while Rebecca sat across from her desk, waiting. This is a fishing expedition. Can he do this? He can file it. Doesn't mean he'll win. Jennifer set down the papers. Oregon law requires disclosure of all estate assets during probate, but it also requires the challenger to show evidence that assets were deliberately concealed. Your brother is claiming you found undisclosed assets. Can he prove it? I found bearer bonds in a safe deposit box. I disclosed them, paid taxes. When? 2 months ago. The bonds were issued in the 70s and 80s. Maggie bought them with legitimate business income. You have documentation? Rebecca pulled out her folder. Copies of the bonds, bank statements showing the deposits after cashing them in, tax forms Melissa had prepared, showing capital gains paid. Jennifer reviewed everything, making notes. This is solid. You disclosed. You paid taxes. Everything's legal. She looked up. Is there more? Maybe. Maybe isn't an answer I can work with. Rebecca told her about the journal, the clues, the research into the Celine, the possibility that Maggie had salvaged cargo from a ship that might have been carrying stolen art. Jennifer listened without interrupting, then sat back in her chair. Okay. First, anything you find going forward, you document immediately. Photographs, appraisals, provenance research. Second, if you do find artwork or other valuables, we need to determine ownership status before you sell or transfer anything. Third, your brother can demand accounting, but he can't just search your house. If he tries, we get a restraining order. How much is this going to cost? Retainer is $5,000. If it goes to court, we bill hourly at $250. But honestly, I think we can get this dismissed. He has no evidence, just suspicions. Judge isn't going to order forensic accounting based on she fixed her roof. Rebecca wrote the check. Another chunk of her reserves disappearing. But necessary. Protection cost money. That weekend, while Kit was at a friend's house for a sleepover, Rebecca went back to the library. Maggie's journal page showing the built-in bookshelves kept circling in her mind, behind the words. The paper hides paper. She'd searched the obvious places, behind the books themselves when they'd still been there. Under the shelves, nothing. Now she looked closer at the shelves themselves. Solid oak, built in, meaning installed when the house was constructed or shortly after. The wood was dark with age and polish, the craftsmanship evident in the dovetail joints and the decorative molding along the edges. Rebecca ran her hands along the molding, searching for seams, for anything that felt loose or deliberate. The sixth shelf from the bottom middle section had molding that felt different, smoother, less aged. She grabbed a flashlight, examined it closely. The molding had been replaced at some point. Same style, same wood, but the patina was wrong. Too uniform, too new. There. A tiny keyhole hidden in the decorative carving. So small she'd missed it, painted over in matching stain, nearly invisible unless you knew to look. Rebecca tried the brass key from the safe deposit box. Didn't fit. Wrong size entirely. She stood back, thinking. Behind the words. Books. Words. Paper. The books were gone. Donated to the library. But Maggie would have planned for that. Would have known Rebecca might not keep them. Rebecca went back to the journal. Flipped to the library sketch. The drawing showed specific books on the shelves. She'd assumed it was just Maggie's way of indicating which shelf. But what if it was literal? One book spine in the drawing was labeled differently than the others. Instead of a title, just initials. R.B. Robert Burns. The collected works. Rebecca grabbed her phone, searched her photos. She'd photographed everything in the house before donating. Found the library shots, zoomed in on the bookshelves. There, third shelf. The collected works of Robert Burns. She pulled up the library's website, searched their catalog. The book wasn't there. They hadn't kept it. Rebecca called the library. Hi, I donated books from my grandmother's estate about 3 months ago. I need to check if a specific volume is still there. The librarian put her on hold. 5 minutes later came back. We have your donation boxed in back storage. We're processing collections slowly. Give me the title. The collected works of Robert Burns. 1 moment. Keyboard sounds. Shows here but hasn't been cataloged yet. You want to reclaim it? Yes. Can I pick it up today? Give us an hour. Rebecca drove to the library, collected the book. Heavy leather binding, gilt edges, the kind of edition that cost serious money when new. She didn't open it until she was back home, sitting at her kitchen table with good light and clean hands. The book felt wrong, too light for its size. She opened the cover. The pages were real for the first 20 or so. Then she hit hollowed-out interior. Someone had carefully cut away the center of the book, creating a hidden compartment. Inside the compartment, a small iron key. Rebecca drove straight back to the library shelf. The key fit the molding lock perfectly. The click was satisfying. Mechanical. Final. She turned the key and felt something disengage inside the woodwork. The entire shelf section swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a narrow space behind. Climate-controlled. A small dehumidifier still running, plugged into an outlet inside the wall cavity. 4 framed paintings wrapped in archival cloth. 3 small sculptures on protective foam. All of it preserved carefully, professionally, like someone had known exactly how to store valuable art for decades. Rebecca unwrapped the first painting with trembling hands. Landscape. Scottish Highlands. Rolling green hills under dramatic sky. Signed in the corner. S.J. Peploe, 1928. She photographed it. Searched the artist. Samuel John Peploe, Scottish colorist. Important early 20th century painter. Then she added more search terms. Peploe stolen 1972. Hit on the third result. An art recovery database. Landscape with highlands, oil on canvas, 1928. Reported stolen from Drummond Estate, Edinburgh, 1972. Value at time, £45,000. Current estimated value, $400,000 to $600,000. Rebecca carefully wrapped the painting back up. The sculptures were unlabeled but clearly old. Bronze. Fine detail work. Possibly Scottish as well, given the themes. She took photographs of everything. Serial numbers where they existed. Signatures. Condition notes. Then she closed the hidden compartment, locked it, and put the key in her pocket. Her phone rang. Kit's friend's mom. Hey, Rebecca, just wanted to check. You're picking Kit up at noon tomorrow, right? Yeah. Noon. Thanks for having him. No problem. They're having a blast. Rebecca hung up, looked at the closed bookshelf. Behind the words, behind the facade of a library, behind 50 years of silence, Maggie had salvaged stolen art, had hidden it, had kept it secret for half a century, and now Rebecca owned it. Legally, probably, morally, questionably, practically, it was worth a fortune. But what did you do with stolen art that had been hidden for 50 years? Art that had been reported, insured, compensated? Art that existed in a legal gray area so complex that even thinking about it made Rebecca's head hurt? She needed an expert. Someone who understood art recovery. Someone discreet. Rebecca searched. Art recovery specialist, Seattle. Several results. Auction houses, insurance companies. Then one name that appeared in multiple contexts. Timothy Walsh, rare art dealer. Specialization in Scottish and Irish work. Reputation for discretion and ethical dealing. His website was professional but understated. Contact page listed a Seattle address and phone number. Rebecca called, expecting voicemail. Got a live person instead. Walsh Gallery. This is Timothy. Hi, my name is Rebecca Clark. I have a delicate situation involving some artwork that I found in my grandmother's estate. Someone recommended I speak with you. What kind of artwork? Scottish. Early 20th century. Possibly. Complicated provenance. Long pause. Complicated how? I'd rather discuss that in person. Another pause. Rebecca could almost hear him deciding. I have an opening Tuesday afternoon. 2 o'clock. Can you bring photographs? Yes. Don't bring the actual pieces. Just photos. And any documentation you have about their origin. Rebecca drove to Seattle on Tuesday, leaving Kit with Mrs. Chen. The gallery was in a quiet neighborhood north of downtown, occupying the ground floor of a renovated brick building. Timothy Walsh was younger than his professional website suggested. Maybe 50. Silver hair, good suit, hands that looked like they handled valuable objects regularly. Careful hands. He led Rebecca to a private viewing room. Windows that could be covered with blackout shades. Professional lighting. White walls. Rebecca pulled out her phone, showed him the photographs. Timothy examined each one carefully, zooming in on signatures, on brushwork, on details Rebecca hadn't even noticed. Where did you get these? My grandmother's house, hidden behind a bookshelf. And your grandmother was? Margaret Thornton. She ran a maritime salvage business in Portland from the 70s to the 90s. Timothy's expression changed, recognition flickering behind professional neutrality. The Celine. Rebecca's stomach dropped. You know about it? Anyone who works in Scottish art recovery knows about the Celine. It's legend. He set down the phone. In 1974, a Panamanian cargo ship went down off the Oregon coast, officially carrying lumber and machine parts, unofficially rumored to be transporting stolen artwork from Scottish estates. The ship sank. The cargo disappeared. The art was never recovered. Until now. Until now. Timothy picked up the phone again, studied the peplo. This is real. I'd need to authenticate in person, but based on these photos, this is the actual Drummond peplo. It's been missing for 52 years. What do I do with it? Timothy sat back, considering. You have 3 options. 1. Keep it hidden forever. Pass it on to your children with the same instructions. Let it stay buried. What's option 2? Return it anonymously to Scotland. Work with me to arrange quiet transfer to the National Galleries or the original estate owners if they're still around. No questions, no legal exposure. You get nothing, but you also get no problems. And 3, we authenticate everything, research the current ownership status. Most likely, the original insurers paid out in the 70s and the estates were compensated. If that's the case, the insurers technically own the recovery rights. We negotiate with them. They pay recovery fees, usually 20 to 30% of current value. You pay taxes on that. Keep the rest. Everything legal, everything documented. Rebecca did quick math. If the peplo is worth $400,000, 20% is $80,000. After taxes, you'd net maybe $50,000. But that's just one painting. If all 4 pieces are authentic and we can establish the insurance situation, you're looking at total recovery fees between $1 and $1.5 million. After taxes and my commission, you'd walk away with maybe $700,000. Your commission is 15% of total recovery fees. I handle all negotiations, authentication, legal arrangements. You get clean money you can put in a bank. $700,000. Clean, legal, money that wouldn't blow up in her face when Richard's lawyers came sniffing. What's the risk? That the ownership situation is more complicated than we think. That someone has a valid claim that supersedes insurance recovery. That Scotland demands full return with no compensation. But honestly, after 50 years, most of these cases settle quietly. Everyone wants resolution more than they want fights. Rebecca looked at the photos on her phone. Paintings Maggie had hidden. Treasure salvaged from a ship that shouldn't have been carrying it in the first place. Money can't make you rich if it destroys you in the getting. The real wealth is what you can keep without losing yourself. I need to think about it. Take your time. But Rebecca, be careful who you tell. This kind of discovery attracts attention. Not all of it good. Rebecca drove back to Portland with her mind spinning. $700,000. Enough to finish the house, set up college funds for Kit, start the kind of life they'd never had access to. But it meant trusting Timothy. Meant navigating legal complexity that could go wrong in dozens of ways. Meant taking art that had been hidden and pulling it into light where Richard and Stephanie and anyone else could see. She got home after dark. Kit was asleep on Mrs. Chen's couch. Rebecca carried him back to their house, tucked him into bed, and sat in the library staring at the bookshelf that hid a fortune. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer, her attorney. Richard filed motion to compel accounting. Hearing scheduled for next month. We need to prepare. Rebecca typed back. Will everything I found need to be disclosed? Anything of significant value, yes. Court can compel full inventory of estate contents. Rebecca set down her phone, looked at the locked bookshelf. Next month. She had maybe 4 weeks before a court could order her to reveal everything. 4 weeks to decide what to do with stolen art worth $1 million that her grandmother had hidden for 50 years. 4 weeks before her sibling's lawyer could force her to show her cards. The clock was ticking. Rebecca spent the next week working through scenarios. Each one ended badly. Option 1. Disclose the art to the court. Watch Richard and Stephanie demand their share, spend years in legal battles over ownership rights. Option 2. Keep it hidden. Risk contempt charges if discovered. Lose everything anyway. Option 3. Work with Timothy before the hearing. Get the art authenticated and into the recovery process. Have clean documented assets before Richard's lawyer could demand accounting. Option 3 had the most risk, but the cleanest exit. She called Timothy on Thursday morning. I want to move forward. All of it. Authentication, recovery negotiations, the whole process. Timothy's voice carried professional caution. You understand this will take months. Maybe a year. Art authentication isn't fast. I have 4 weeks before a court hearing. I need documentation showing I'm handling this properly, that I'm not hiding assets. I'm recovering them through legitimate channels. That I can do. Bring me one painting. The Peplo. I'll start authentication immediately and draft a letter of intent for your attorney. Shows the court you're being transparent. Rebecca packed the painting that afternoon, wrapped it in clean blankets, placed it in a hard-shell suitcase, drove to Seattle in Friday traffic that turned the 90-minute trip into 3 hours. Timothy's gallery had a restoration workshop in the back. Proper lighting, climate control, examination equipment that looked like it belonged in a hospital. He unwrapped the Peplo with the kind of care surgeons used on exposed organs. I'll need 2 weeks for full authentication. Pigment analysis, canvas dating, provenance research, but preliminary examination. He adjusted a magnifying lamp, studied the brushwork. This is real. The style, the technique, even the craquelure pattern matches Peplo's known work from this period. 2 weeks puts us right at my court date. I'll have preliminary findings in 10 days. Enough for your attorney to file with the court. Timothy photographed the painting from multiple angles. Rebecca, once we start this process, it becomes public record. Your siblings will know. Everyone will know. They're going to find out anyway. At least this way it's on my terms. The drive home felt lighter somehow. Decision made. Path chosen. No more hiding in uncertainty. She stopped for gas outside Olympia. Her phone rang while she was filling the tank. Jennifer, Richard's attorney just filed an emergency motion. They want immediate access to the house to conduct their own inventory. Rebecca's hand tightened on the gas pump. Can they do that? They can ask. Judge has to approve. Hearing is Monday morning. We need to be ready. What do I need to do? Nothing. I'll handle it. But Rebecca, is there anything in that house that would be problematic if they searched? Rebecca thought about the bookshelf, the hidden compartment. 3 more paintings and 3 sculptures still concealed behind Victorian woodwork. There's art, hidden. I'm in the process of getting it authenticated for legitimate recovery. 1 piece is already with an expert in Seattle. Jennifer's silence spoke volumes. How much art? 4 paintings, 3 sculptures, possibly worth over $1 million in recovery fees. Jesus. Okay. Here's what we do. You photograph everything still in the house, document exactly where you found it. I'll file our own motion Monday morning showing you've already begun proper authentication and recovery procedures. We get ahead of this. Rebecca spent the weekend photographing the hidden compartment, the remaining paintings, the sculptures, every angle, every detail. She created a spreadsheet documenting discovery dates, estimated values based on preliminary research, and Timothy's contact information. Kit helped without knowing what he was helping with. Mom, why are you taking pictures of the bookshelf? Insurance documentation. In case anything gets damaged, is Uncle Richard going to come back? The question landed hard. Kit had been quieter since Richard's visit, more watchful, like he'd learned that family could be dangerous. Not if I can help it, buddy. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Rebecca dressed in the only suit she owned, a charcoal gray number from her accounting days that still fit despite everything. Jennifer met her outside the courthouse, briefcase in hand, expression grim. They're pushing hard. Richard's attorney is claiming you've been systematically looting the estate. That's insane. It's strategy. They throw everything at the wall, hope something sticks. But we've got the documentation, the bonds you disclosed and paid taxes on, the art authentication in progress. You've done everything right. The courtroom was smaller than Rebecca expected. Judge Kenneth Fraser presided, 60-something, gray hair, reading glasses perched on a nose that suggested he'd heard every lie attorneys could tell. Richard sat at the plaintiff's table with his attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Vance, who looked like she billed $400 an hour. Stephanie was there too. Sitting in the gallery, arms crossed, face carefully neutral. Their eyes met. Stephanie looked away first. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. Patricia Vance argued that Rebecca had concealed assets, improved the property beyond what her disclosed income could support, and refused to cooperate with reasonable requests for accounting. Jennifer countered with bank statements, tax returns, documentation of the bearer bonds, and Timothy's letter confirming ongoing authentication of artwork discovered in the estate. Judge Fraser listened to both sides, made notes, asked pointed questions. Miss Clark, you found bearer bonds in a safe deposit box. When did you disclose this to the estate? Rebecca stood. 2 months after probate closed, Your Honor. I discovered them while sorting through my grandmother's effects. I immediately consulted with a financial advisor, cashed them through proper channels, and paid all required taxes. The documentation is in Exhibit C. And this artwork you're now claiming to have found, when was that discovered? 3 weeks ago, Your Honor, hidden behind a bookshelf in the library. I'm working with a certified art recovery specialist to authenticate and determine proper ownership channels. Why didn't you disclose it immediately? I wanted to understand what I had before making claims. The pieces appear to be from a 1974 maritime salvage operation. There are questions about provenance and insurance recovery rights. I'm handling it properly through professional channels. Fraser looked at Richard's attorney. Miss Vance, your client is claiming deliberate concealment. But it appears Miss Clark has disclosed everything she's found and is following proper procedures. What's your evidence of wrongdoing? Patricia shuffled papers. Your Honor, the timeline is suspicious. Miss Clark claims poverty during probate, then suddenly has money for major home repairs. The bearer bonds she disclosed only after being questioned about her finances. This artwork appears only after we filed for accounting. The pattern suggests she's revealing assets only when caught, or it suggests she's finding things as she renovates a house that was sealed up for decades. Fraser removed his glasses. Miss Vance, I'm not seeing evidence of concealment. I'm seeing someone discovering assets over time and handling them appropriately. Unless you have proof Miss Clark knew about these items during probate and deliberately hid them, I'm inclined to deny your motion for emergency access. Patricia's jaw tightened. Your Honor, we request the court order a complete inventory of the property before anything else is removed or sold. I'll agree to that, but it will be conducted by a neutral third party, not by the plaintiff. I'll appoint a professional estate appraiser. Miss Clark, you will provide full access for this inventory. Understood? Rebecca nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Inventory will be conducted within 30 days. Both parties will receive the report. We'll reconvene after that to determine if any redistribution is warranted. Fraser banged his gavel. Next case. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer walked Rebecca to her car. That went well. He's not buying their concealment argument. What happens with the inventory? Appraiser comes through, catalogs everything, estimates value, files a report. If there's significant undisclosed value, the judge might order redistribution. But artwork and authentication isn't liquid value, it's potential value. Big difference. Rebecca unlocked her car. So I just wait? You wait. Keep working with Timothy. Get that authentication completed. And Rebecca Jennifer's expression turned serious. Watch your back. Richard looked desperate in there. Desperate people make bad decisions. The appraiser came the following week. Professional woman named Carol Mendez, clipboard and camera, methodical approach. She spent 6 hours measuring rooms, photographing features, assessing condition. Rebecca showed her the hidden bookshelf compartment, explained the art was already in authentication process. Carol made notes without judgment. I'll include this space in the structural assessment. Note that contents have been removed for professional evaluation. You have documentation? Rebecca provided copies of everything. Timothy's letter, photographs, chain of custody records. This is thorough. Most people don't document this well. I learned the hard way to protect myself. Carol finished late afternoon, packed her equipment, handed Rebecca a business card. Report will be filed in 3 weeks. For what it's worth, this house has good bones. Your renovations have been smart, focused on infrastructure, not cosmetics. Someone who knew what they were doing advised you. Someone who owed my grandmother a debt. Those are the best kind of debts, the ones people actually pay. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Maggie's journal, the marked pages she'd found, the ones she'd deciphered. 3 hiding spots discovered. But something nagged at her. The journal had one more marked page toward the back, one she'd seen but hadn't fully understood. She got up at 2 a.m., retrieved the journal from her nightstand. Found the page. The sketch showed an attic. Rough wooden beams. Insulation. Text below. Final gift. north corner, under the pink. Rebecca grabbed her flashlight, climbed to the third floor. The attic access was a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. She'd been up there once, shortly after moving in. Nothing but dust and old insulation, and the dehumidifier Paul had installed to prevent moisture damage. She climbed up now, flashlight cutting through darkness. The attic ran the length of the house, low ceiling, exposed beams, fiberglass insulation between joists. Hot in summer, cold now in March. She made her way toward the north corner, stepping carefully on beams, avoiding the insulation. North corner, under the pink. The insulation was pink, standard residential fiberglass. Rebecca pulled it back carefully, exposing the floor joists beneath. Nothing visible. She pulled back more, working methodically, until her flashlight caught something metallic. Fireproof document boxes. 3 of them. Industrial grade, the kind designed to survive house fires and floods. Rebecca dragged them out one at a time, careful not to lose her footing. Got them down the ladder, into the hallway, into her bedroom where Kit slept soundly in the next room. She opened the first box. Stock certificates. Dozens of them. Old paper, fancy borders, corporate seals, companies she didn't recognize. Computic Industries, 500 shares, 1,976. Pacific Microdevices, 1,000 shares, 1,978. Northwest Software Corp., 750 shares, 1,980. Rebecca photographed them, started researching. Computic had been absorbed by IBM in 1984. Pacific Microdevices merged into Intel in 1986. Northwest Software was acquired by Microsoft in 1991. These weren't worthless antiques. They were corporate fossils that had evolved into tech giants. Stock splits, mergers, conversions, the math made her head spin. She called Melissa at 7 a.m., woke her up, sent the photos. Melissa called back 30 minutes later. Where did you find these? Maggie's attic. Are they real? They look real. But Rebecca, you need to get these authenticated through the original issuing companies. If they're legitimate, if they've been properly maintained through all the mergers and conversions keyboard sounds in the background, I'm doing rough calculations. These could be worth between $2 and $3 million. Rebecca sat down hard on her bed. Million? Maggie bought tech stocks in the 70s and 80s when they were cheap and held them through every boom. If the transfer chain is intact, you own shares in IBM, Intel, and Microsoft dating back 40-plus years. That's serious wealth. Box 2 held books. First editions. Rebecca recognized the style from her library research. Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman, 1,855. The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald, 1,925. Dust Jacket intact. To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee, 1,960, signed. She called Timothy. I need a rare book appraiser. Is that something you handle? What kind of books? Rebecca described them. Timothy let out a low whistle. First edition Gatsby with original jacket? If it's authentic, that's 300,000 minimum. The Whitman could be 500. You're looking at over $1 million in rare books if they're real. Can you authenticate them? I can connect you with someone who can. This is beyond my expertise. But Rebecca, where are you finding all this? My grandmother was very thorough. Box 3 held one item, a letter. Thick stationery, Maggie's handwriting, addressed to Rebecca. Rebecca's hands shook as she opened it. The letter was long. 5 pages, front and back. Maggie's script covering every inch. Rebecca read it sitting on her bedroom floor, as dawnlight crept through the window. The letter told the whole story. How Maggie had fled Glasgow in 1971, escaping a husband whose fists spoke louder than words. How she'd crossed the ocean with 2 daughters, and nothing else. How she'd worked canneries until her hands bled. How she'd met James Harlow, salvage captain, who'd seen something in her not just beauty but ruthless practical intelligence. How they'd become partners, in business, in life, in everything but law. How they'd built Thornton Maritime together. How the Celine job in 1974 had been their biggest score and James's death. The ship had been carrying stolen art, exactly as Rebecca had researched. Scottish estate thefts from the late 60s insurance fraud scheme. But the storm had been real. and James had died trying to save crew members when the vessel went down faster than anyone expected. Maggie had salvaged what she could. Art she couldn't sell without drawing attention, so she'd bought bearer bonds with salvage proceeds from legitimate jobs. Invested in tech stocks when everyone thought computers were a fad. Collected rare books one at a time at estate sales where sellers didn't know what they had. Built an empire on patience and silence. The letter's final section hit hardest. Rebecca, I gave Richard and Stephanie cash because they measure worth in numbers on screens. They'd have burned this house to the ground, searching for what I hid. But you stayed. You changed my oxygen tanks. You read to me when I couldn't see the page anymore. You loved me when I was dying, and disgusting, and no use to anyone. So I'm giving you the real treasure. Not money. Time. The stocks will give you time to build something that matters. The art, properly handled, will give you legitimacy. The books are yours to keep or sell, your choice. But the real gift is this. You don't have to be like them. Richard has addiction demons. Stephanie has pride that'll kill her. You have Kit. You have love. You have what actually matters. Use this wealth to break cycles. For women who start with nothing. For mothers alone. For people like us. Don't just be rich, Mija. Be generous. That's how you win. Rebecca finished reading as Kit wandered in, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Mom, why are you crying? She pulled him close. Because your great-grandma loved us. That's all. The authentication process took 3 months. Timothy handled the art. Melissa worked with corporate archivists at IBM, Intel, and Microsoft to verify the stock certificates. A rare book specialist named Dr. Helen Shapiro examined the first editions under laboratory conditions. Everything came back authentic. The stocks were worth $2.9 million after being properly converted and split-adjusted through 40 years of corporate evolution. The books appraised at $1.4 million total. The art, once Timothy negotiated with UK insurers who'd paid out the theft claims in the 1970s, generated $1.3 million in recovery fees. Rebecca sat in Melissa's office, reviewing the final numbers, trying to comprehend the total. After taxes, Timothy's commission, Dr. Shapiro's fees, legal costs, and setting aside reserves, Melissa tapped her calculator. You'll have approximately $2,600,000 in liquid assets. Plus 1.4 in stock holdings I recommend you don't liquidate. $4 million. Give or take. Congratulations. You're wealthy. Rebecca drove home in a daze, picked up Kit from school, made him macaroni and cheese for dinner because some things didn't change even when everything else did, put him to bed at 8:30, read him 3 chapters of Harry Potter, kissed his forehead, sat in the library and stared at the bookshelf that had held the first secret, thought about what Maggie's letter had said. Don't just be rich, be generous. She called Jennifer the next morning. Richard's lawsuit. I want to settle. Why? We're winning. The appraisal report shows property value at $800,000 with your improvements. Even if the judge orders redistribution of undisclosed assets, you'd keep the majority. Because I don't want to fight my family in court for the next 2 years, and because I have enough. Jennifer's tone shifted. What are you thinking? I'll give Richard and Stephanie each $100,000. Cash, no strings. In exchange, they drop all claims to the estate and sign releases. That's generous, considering they already got over $1 million each. It's enough to get Richard into rehab and keep him there. It's enough for Stephanie to rebuild without her ex-husband's lawyers circling. And it ends this. The settlement conference happened in Jennifer's office. Richard showed up thin and shaking, looking worse than he had in court. Stephanie came alone. No designer clothes, no sunglasses, just jeans and exhaustion. Jennifer laid out the terms. $100,000 each. Full release of all estate claims. No future litigation. Richard stared at the paper. Why would you do this? Rebecca met his eyes. Because you're still my brother, and because Maggie would want me to help if I could. But Richard, this is it. One chance. You take this money, you get clean, or you don't come near me or Kit again. I'm trying. I've been sober for 3 weeks. Then use this for treatment. Actual treatment, not another scheme. Stephanie signed without speaking. Pushed the paper back across the table. Looked at Rebecca with something like shame. I don't deserve this. Probably not. But that's not the point. What is the point? That we're family. And I remember you teaching me to ride a bike when I was 6. I remember you braiding my hair before school. You weren't always like this." Stephanie's composure cracked. Tears tracked down her face, ruining whatever makeup she'd bothered with. "I don't know how I became this person, then become someone else. You've got enough money to start over. Actually start over this time." 6 months later, Rebecca stood in front of a brick building in southeast Portland. The sign above the door read, "The Margaret Thornton Foundation." The building had been a warehouse. She'd bought it for $300,000, spent another $200 on renovation. Paul had overseen the work, transformed industrial space into something warm and functional. Offices, training rooms, childcare area, kitchen. The foundation's mission was simple: help single mothers get stable. Housing assistance, job training, childcare support, microloans for small businesses. Start where people were and give them tools to build something better. Rebecca had endowed it with $1 million, enough to operate for years if managed properly. Stephanie ran it. Turned out she was good at logistics when she wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She'd thrown herself into the work with intensity that suggested she was trying to prove something, maybe to herself. Richard was doing better. 6 months sober, living in a halfway house Paul had recommended, working construction. He came to Sunday dinners sometimes. Still fragile, still working through things, but showing up. That counted for something. The foundation's opening day brought unexpected crowds. Local news covered it. Women who needed the services. Community leaders. Paul showed up with his crew, donated labor for future projects. Kit helped set up chairs, carried boxes, charmed everyone he talked to. 9 years old now, confident and grounded in ways Rebecca had never been at his age. He knew where he came from, knew what his great-grandmother had built, knew that wealth meant responsibility. During the opening ceremony, Rebecca stood at the podium, looked out at faces she recognized and faces she didn't. "My grandmother, Margaret Thornton, came to this country with nothing but 2 daughters and the determination to survive. She built a business through hard work and smart choices. She hid that wealth because she knew something important. Money doesn't make you rich if it destroys you in the getting. The real wealth is what you can build without losing yourself. This foundation exists to give other women what Maggie gave me. A chance. A real chance. Not charity, not handouts, but support while you build something that lasts." The applause was warm, genuine. People who understood what it meant to start from zero and climb. Afterward, Kit found her in the foundation's library, a room Rebecca had designed with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and window seats that echoed the library at home. "Mom, this is really cool." "Yeah? Great-Grandma Maggie would like it." "I think so too." "Did she know? Before she died? That you'd do this?" Rebecca thought about Maggie's letter. "Use this wealth to break cycles. Be generous." I think she hoped. That's close enough. 1 year after the will reading, Rebecca sat on the porch of 47 Harlow Ridge in evening light that turned everything gold. The house glowed, fully restored now. New roof, new windows, fresh paint in period-appropriate colors. Worth well over $1 million. Kit was inside doing homework. The foundation was thriving. Richard was approaching 1 year sober. Stephanie had found something like purpose. The family was broken, but mending in the way bones mend stronger at the fracture point if you set it right. Rebecca's phone buzzed. Text from George Morrison, the estate attorney. Saw the news coverage of the foundation opening. Maggie would be proud. Well done. She typed back. She gave me the blueprint. I just followed it. The truth was more complicated. Maggie had given her a house full of secrets and a letter full of wisdom. Rebecca had done the work of transforming hidden wealth into visible good, of taking salvaged treasure and building something that helped people instead of hurting them. The treasure wasn't what you inherited. It was what you built with it. It makes you wonder how often we judge people by what they're given instead of what they give back. How often we assume we know someone's story because we see the surface. How often we miss the real wealth because we're too busy counting money. Rebecca had been the one everyone counted out, the one who got screwed, the one left with the falling house while her siblings flew away with cash. Turned out the house was everything. The real inheritance. Not because of what was hidden in it, though that mattered, but because it taught her that staying matters, that patience matters, that building something that lasts, is worth more than flying away with whatever fits in your pockets. Kit came out onto the porch, sat next to her on the swing Paul had installed. Mom, can I ask you something? Always. If Great-Grandma Maggie had given you the money instead of the house, would we be different? Rebecca thought about it. Really thought. Probably. Money's easy to waste. Houses make you work. They teach you that good things take time. Do you wish she'd given you the money? Not even a little bit. They swung in comfortable silence while the sun set over Portland, turning the sky shades of orange and pink that painters spent lifetimes trying to capture. Rebecca thought about Maggie somewhere in this spectrum of light, watching, approving. Somewhere in the distance, the foundation's lights came on. Stephanie's car pulled into the parking lot. Another late-night running programs, helping women who were where Maggie had been 50 years ago, where Rebecca had been 2 years ago, where too many women still were. The cycle broke here. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to matter. Kit's voice interrupted her thoughts. Mom? Yeah, buddy. I'm glad we got the house. Me too, even though it was falling apart. Especially because it was falling apart. Best things usually are before you fix them. Have you ever been underestimated? Ever had to prove everyone wrong? Tell us in the comments. We read every one. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. We tell stories like this every week. Real people, real struggles, real victories. Thanks for watching. Remember, the real treasure isn't what you're given, it's what you give back.